Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm joined by one of the best hockey analysts out there, TSN's Director of Scouting, Craig Button. I just want to say how much I enjoy your work. I think I always am very excited when you go on TSN and say something. I always want to know what it is about whatever team or whatever's up in the NHL. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Craig, and coming on.
Thank you for the very kind words, Alex. Hockey really courses through the veins of Canadians coast to coast, and certainly when you have fans and people that are so invested in the sport and have great knowledge in the sport, it creates a great opportunity to offer perspective, dialogue, disagreement, debate, and that's what makes it all fun. And for me to have that opportunity and to be able to engage on a regular basis, including being here with you on this podcast, it's a great thrill for me. So it's fun, enjoyable, and thanks for asking me to be part of it.
I want to ask because you alluded to it. It's kind of ingrained in Canadians, fabric of enjoying the game. For you, you have a very storied history in your family of within the NHL. Your dad was the director of Central Scouting. Your mom was Punch Imlach's secretary. Your brother Todd works for the Flames. Just how influential was that in you pursuing a career in the game of hockey in the NHL?
Well, it's interesting because I never thought about it. It was just part of your life. When something just becomes normalized, right? My mother was Punch and Lack secretary, so my dad was working in the National Hockey League. He was an assistant manager in Pittsburgh before becoming the general manager, before starting Central Scouting, before going to be an assistant manager in Washington with the Capitals. That is just what I do. What you realize as you get a little bit older, you go, wait a second here. Other people don't have this opportunity and to go into dressing rooms and to meet current players and former players and to be around it. So, you do realize that you're pretty lucky, and certainly I was in so many different regards. I guess a friend of mine said this to me many, many years ago. He said you had keys that opened up doors, and I did. And so, but my parents were, where I grew up in Montreal. We were playing sports, and people, obviously the Canadiens were winning Stanley Cups, and so it was a lot of fun. But hockey was something that we participated in and we're all part of. And it didn't matter that my parents worked had worked or were working in hockey. You just go out and play, and you just want to have the joy of playing and the joy of competing and being with your friends, being with your teammates, and everything that went with it. And when I finished playing junior hockey when I was 20 and went to university, I was thinking about a career in international banking. And I wasn't thinking about hockey. I really wasn't. And it kind of fell onto my lap in a way that was fortuitous as you look back onto it. And Jack Ferreira, who hired me in Minnesota when he became the general manager, he had worked with my dad, knew my, and he said, try it. If it doesn't work out, you know what, you can go and work in banking. In fact, he said, I know people in banking. He goes, I could help you. So, I'm forever grateful to Jack for giving me the opportunity, for encouraging me to try it, because it's something that I do now with young people. I said, hey, you know what? If it works out, great. If it doesn't, so what? If you're 23 or 25 or whatever, you got 75 years to live or 65 years to live. Like you can start to do other things. And I don't think it's an all or nothing proposition at a young age. And Jack really impressed that upon me without me fully taking it in. But as you get a little bit older, you go, wait a sec, that was a really strong message. I was on there. So I try to give that message to young people in any area of life that they're doing. But certainly I feel lucky, years ago, it was very interesting. Jean Beliveau played for Punch Imlach with the Quebec Aces many, many years ago. He was his manager. And I went in and I was in the Montreal Canadiens alumni room. And Jean Beliveau was there, got introduced to Jean Beliveau. And it was mentioned to Jean Beliveau that, Craig's mother was Punch Imlach's secretary. And Mr. Beliveau said, he goes, was your mother Bridget D'Souza? and I nearly dropped dead, like on the spot.
Wow.
But because whenever Jean Beliveau came into Toronto, he always came to visit Punch. And my mother was
Oh, there you go.
the secretary, so she was always there. Like, and this is a number of years. This wasn't a
Wow.
one-off. It was, they played each other. I don't know how many times,
All the
14
time.
times a year, so 7 times in Toronto, everything. And I was just, it was just amazed that that's what. But
Wow.
I mean, Ja always talked about how important Punch was to his career, and you think back to those things, and obviously, my mother, she was young, she loved hockey, she was in awe of Jean Beliveau, as everybody was, and so those are the types of things that years later you go, wow, like these are, you think about some of the people that you've been around, people that have touched you, and that you really look back on and go, geez, how lucky have I been? And quite frankly, I feel exceptionally lucky.
And maybe with your luck, but also, I know you put in the hard yards for a long time, but describe a little bit about, starting in Minnesota and, scouting for the Stars. Obviously they moved to Dallas, and then like just tell us a little bit about your career journey as in front offices and scouting, and then becoming the GM of the Calgary Flames.
Alex, I got, like, again, things you can't plan for, but you get incredibly lucky. So I talked about Jack Ferrer, who was the general manager. Dean Lombardi was the assistant general manager in Minnesota.
Wow.
So now you got a young Dean Lombardi, but Les Jackson, who had been an assistant coach with the Minnesota North Stars, had moved into the scouting department. And I mean, outside of my parents, he's the most influential person in my life when it comes to hockey. Uh, when I think about everything that Les did, I mean, he was patient. He's so smart. He works with the Florida Panthers now. So and at the same time that he's smart and he's patient, he's also educating you.
Mm.
But he did it in such a manner that you just realize, geez, okay, I better think about that. And the way he would ask questions. We had a small group. Chuck Grillo was part of that group. So I got really, really hands-on teaching and from people, because it wasn't a big staff. We couldn't afford a big staff. So it was a small group of people that really, and we had an opportunity to work and to do things. And again, I had some tremendous mentors there, and Les, what was a mentor is a mentor, and somebody I respect so much. Then the team got kind of split. It was going to San Jose, and Bob Clark and Bob Gainey come in. Like, I didn't get to pick Bob Clark and Bob Gainey. So all of a sudden now I'm around Bob Clark and Bob Gainey, and it was unbelievable. Like, really, you're sitting there going, like, these are players that you grew up watching, and now you know how, and they're obviously Hall of Fame players. They were great players, but they're great people, and they had the same things that Les has. They wanted to win. They were great competitors, but they wanted to help you, grow and learn. And then Bob Clark went back to Philadelphia. Bob Gainey was the general manager and coach, and along with Doug Armstrong, Les Jackson, myself, and Bob, it was the four of us. We were a small quartet, and so the opportunity to learn, to grow, to sink your teeth into a lot of different areas, and to have the elbow room to operate. That was a Bob Gainey term. Really afforded us the ability to grow and to gain confidence in what we were doing. And our team, obviously moved. We had growing pains. We ultimately won. And then you look at, I got an opportunity to be a manager. Doug Armstrong became the manager of Dallas, went on to St. Louis, won a Stanley Cup there. Les Jackson has been a very, very successful executive in the National Hockey League, continues to be really influential with the Florida Panthers. So, you think about how it all unfolded. I didn't get to pick it. Like, I fell into it. And again, back to fortuitous luck. I mean, like, I was lucky. And I don't, and I see, and staffs now need to be bigger. They need to be, they need to cover a lot more points and everything. So the opportunities I was afforded, they're not there now, and they can't be there. It has to be different. It has to be a scenario where, but it doesn't mean you can't take advantage of a smaller group to
Mm.
grow and to spread your wings and to get a little bit of elbow room and to find people that can really help you and mentor you and be guiding lights for you in your career. It's not going to be the same as it was in a smaller setting
Mm-hmm.
where it was for me in Minnesota and Dallas. But you got to just make what you got to do is just take whatever the setting is and just extrapolate a smaller subset of it and try to operate it, and then continue to grow within that subset into a bigger set.
With that, like, what would you say you were a scout and scouting players for so long? One, first, how much credit do you take in drafting Jarome Iginla? And the second one was just like, what would you say, Craig, is kind of your philosophy for scouting?
Well, I'm taking all the credit for Jarome. It was clearly me that it's. I'll tell you an interesting backstory on Jarome. So we and it's amazing. So Jarome was like, not a flash and dash player. And you watch young players and you see the obvious skill, and I don't use flash and dash negatively, but players that catch your eye and wow, you can see, like, I mean, like when you first see Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid, it's like, wow, it's unbelievable. Jerome didn't have those elements. He was on a really, really strong team in Kamloops. And in the Memorial Cup in 1994, he was a 16-year-old. And so, we're at the Memorial Cup, and I mean, we're watching Kamloops. There was always good reason to watch Kamloops. We had drafted players from there. There was always going to be players coming up for the draft. And so we were, on the radar. Jarome became a player that jumped on the radar. Shane Doan was on that team. There was lots of other good young players. So the next year there was a lockout. But Norm Green, our owner in Dallas, he said, listen, scouting is really, really important to what we're trying to do. A lot of teams stopped scouting. They parked the scouts. There wasn't video back then, so you couldn't do it. You were literally parked. Well, Norm Green said, you know what, we got to continue to do this. We got to really continue to scout. So he didn't pull us back. And I'm going to go back to Les Jackson. Les Jackson, who was so conscientious and so caring. I mean, he when we had a small group, he said, let's use our hotel points. Let's use the airline points when we can. We had a terrific CFO, Rick McLaughlin, who told us, hey, here's where we're at. Like, manage this. And so everybody, when I talk about all hands on deck sacrificing, that's what we did. So we never stopped scouting. A lot of teams, when the lockout ended in January of 1995, had to pick up. So now you're trying to pick up a lot. That being said, we had a kind of what I would call kind of a continuing observation of all the players. So it wasn't like we had to pick up and say, okay, where are they at now? But I will say this, some players you can go and watch, and as a staff, you can go and watch them, and you can get 4 or 5 viewings each. If you have 5 people on your staff, that's 25 viewings. You go, we're comfortable. We're totally comfortable here. We know what we got. And that happens. That does happen. But there's other times it doesn't happen. And that was the case with Jarome Iginla. We went to the Memorial Cup in 1995. Now, did we like Jarome Iginla? Yeah, we liked Jarome Iginla. But we were still evaluating and in terms of the grouping, where he fit in and where he would be. It wasn't until we got near the end of the Memorial Cup, and I'm telling you, people had seen him play because Kamloops was so good. I probably saw Jarome play 25 times, but we had people that see him play 15 times, 20 times. And it was only when we got to that point of watching him so much that we really got to a point of we're really comfortable with his game. Now, was he the only player? I mean, I can tell you that we really liked Terry Ryan, who was playing in Tri-Cities that year. He got drafted by Montreal 8. Obviously, we like Shane Doan. We like J.S. Giguère, who was the 13th pick. We like Jay McKee. So we had a grouping of players. Obviously, some of the players, Doan and Terry Ryan, aren't there. When we came to pick at 11, we have a choice between Jarome, a goaltender, and Giguère, and Jay McKee. And our decision, I mean, obviously, everybody knows what our decision was. But that was, if ever there was an unbelievably concentrated group effort to do, we had it with Jarome. But that was our process. And again, I'm going to go back to Les. That was the process. We worked our list every single week. We had a conference call every single week with our scouts, with our full-time scouts. We shared information, we shared scouting reports, we had secure people that were going to use the information to instruct and to inform, not to influence. And so strong people. So we worked on our list every single week. And you got to take in information all through the course of the year. So when you bring up Jarome, but that's how we did it with all players, and certainly Jarome. I mean, we drafted Jarome. We thought Jarome would be a really strong power forward in the NHL, 35 goal scorer. That's what we thought. We knew when we drafted him, we were drafting a good player. We knew when we traded him, we were trading a very good player. Like, I'd like to tell you that he became what we thought he'd become. He so far exceeded what we projected for him. And, you think about 600 plus goals, everything that went with it. I mean, Jarome was a brilliant player. And I will say this, he's a brilliant player, great player, even a better person.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you to transition, because then you were the GM of Jarome Iginla for a while in Calgary. Just give us, what was it like to be a GM, and maybe give us kind of a day in the life of Craig Budden as the GM of the Calgary Flames. And lastly, do you take all credit again for them making the finals the year after you left?
Well, I'll answer the second question first, Alex. No, I don't. There's a lot of people. I mean, Al Coates is the one that made the trade for Jarome Iginla. I was in Dallas, and Al Coates was the manager. And I mean, Joe Nieuwendyk. I mean, we were looking to try to add a center to our group to have a Sunrise duo along with Mike Modano, who was a superstar. And Joe Nieuwendyk became available, but Al was very, very clear from the outset that what he was looking for. And when he first started to mention the name Jarome Iginla, listen, our shoulder blades, there was a big pinch between our shoulder blades and a gulp. Again, I'm going to go back to Les Jackson and I want to say we were in Tri-Cities. That's where I think we may have been. And we had just watched Jarome play, and we were sitting around. Les and he could play for us right now. And I said, yeah, he could. Now, we were already in the throes of discussions. This is about latter part of November. Anyway, it got to the point, and we talk about it. We talk about what it means to have Joe Nieuwendyk, what it means not to have Jarome Iginla. And as a manager, and Bob certainly was doing this, you try to throw some different options Al Coates' way. Well, Al wasn't considering any other options, nor should he be. And I still remember the day. And and it's going to dovetail into how we talk about being a GM and a day in the life of a GM. But we're on a call, and I was getting down near there was a trade deadline prior to Christmas, and Bob Gainey said, okay, here's where we're at. This is the deal. We can make the deal, but we don't have to make the deal. If we make the deal, we're getting a really good center, really like a top center in Joe Nieuwendyk that really complements Joe Nieuwendyk. Or complements Mike Modano, and everything that meant with that. We've been trying to sign a center to complement Mike. And we're going to lose a really, really good young player in Jarome Iginla. And if we don't make the trade, we're going to still have to try to find a really good center, and it's not going to stop us from doing that. And we're going to have a really, really good player in Jarome Iginla. And then Bob said, he goes, but what we got to keep in mind is we have a lot of good young players. And at some point in time, how do we take those young group of players, Darren Hatcher, Richard Madden, Jere Lehtinen, Jamie Lagenbrunner, Mike Modano, how do we take those players and allow them to go to the next level? And it was at that moment in time where it was crystal clear what we needed to do. And we did it. Because having Joe was really like, you can carry on and have young players. All you're ever going to do is have young players.
Yeah.
You have to be able to consider where you're at with those young players and how you help them. And certainly Jarome there was no question he would have been a superstar in Dallas. But where we were at that point in time, we had to make that decision. And there was no banging. Bob didn't say, this is what we're doing, laid it out. And It was like, okay, yeah, but get it done, Bob. Like, and so that's where I dovetail into the manager's job. I learned lots. I learned from Jack Ferreira, Bob Clark, but Bob Gainey, patience.
Mm,
What you're trying to do. Don't be knee jerk. You can't be knee jerk. You're playing, you're looking at your team, and you're saying, okay, geez, we lost last night, or we won, and you get caught up in those emotions. What you got to do is stay. I say this continuously, Alex. A manager's job is to see his team as it is, not as he hoped that it was, not that
mm,
he wishes that it was, not that what he thought that it was, that what it was. And I'll give you an example. In 1991, our team in Minnesota, I called it the Magical Mystery Tour. We weren't a very good team. In fact, at the end of January that year, we were 4 points out of last place. Well, that was the Eric Lindros draft. Well, now you're sitting there thinking, like, Eric Lindros, like, what do you do? Bob Clark was having none of that. He said, I will never be part of a league where you try to lose. So anyway, we ended up on a magical run. We ended up going all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And, we lost to Pittsburgh, but it's magical because anytime you get on that, it's magical. It's a mystery because you ask yourself, really, like, how did this happen? Right? Like, you're kind of
yeah.
pinching yourself. Is this really happening? Anyway, we were in meetings after that, and there was a lot of talk about, where's the team, what we got to do, how Pittsburgh beat us, and everything. Bob Gainey, who was the coach at that time, raised his hand and he said, he goes, okay, it's great. We got to the Stanley Cup final. We have to be a better regular season team. We didn't have success in the regular season. We got on an unbelievable, great roll here. Everybody got playing and maxing out to their abilities, but we're not a good enough team. And until we become a good enough team in the regular season, we can't get caught up in what just happened. Let's focus on what we got to do to be a really that's why I say you got to see your team as it is. So
Mm,
you're managing young players that want to get into the lineup, coaches that want to win right now, empty seats in the building,
yep.
and owners are trying to get those. And so you have all these things you're trying to work with to try to affect positive outcomes. And so you're dealing like on an everyday basis with your team, your coach, where you're at. And then you're also thinking about, okay, what can we do? So you're talking to your scouts, you're getting reports, you're looking at what players could be, are they interested in? Because you want that open dialogue. You want that, what I call that highway of information flowing. And as a manager, you got to go out and now you got to talk to the other managers to understand what they may be thinking. So that
Mm,
information highway is flowing back to them. Hey, listen, they're thinking about this. What do you think about that? And so that takes up time but there's a discipline to it. And
mm,
you have to be able to know what's going on in the league. You have to be able to see your team as it is. You have to give and again, because we were lucky, like in terms of my experiences, Bob Gainey said, you're the scouts, go scout. I did the same thing as a manager. I remember
oh,
one year there was a discussion on a player, and there I said, that's not my call. You guys know what the criteria is, the parameters. We know what we're trying to do. You have you're the ones who are going to have to make that call, not me. And because I said, and Ken Holland reminded me of this when I became a manager. He said, Craig, you've scouted. There's going to be a tendency maybe for you to drift over there because that's what you know really well. He says, unless you're in it full time, he says you can't dabble in it. And I
mm,
never forgot that. And so I think that that's really important. That doesn't mean you don't go out and watch the players, offer a little bit of opinion and thought, but you can't be the decision maker there. And I think that, one of the things that I learned from being in and really Minnesota, we were Norm came in and he was great to us and really changing. And then we went down to Dallas. Well, Norm hired Jim Lights, who came from the Detroit Red Wings. Rick McLaughlin came from the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was fantastic. Bill Strong was a marketing. He was great. We had a lot of good people, but and Jim was great at this. Here's your job, do it.
mm,
Jeff Kogan was with us. He said, here's your job, do it. And you realize that, yeah, you know what? Here's what I'm tasked with. I better go do that really, really well. And so as a manager, that's what I try to do, whether it be in the equipment manager's office. And Gus Thorson was the equipment manager in Calgary. He was fantastic. Whether it be in the training area, Morris Boyer, whether it be in the minor league area, Jim Playfair was down there.
mm.
You got to let people do their job. You hire them because if you don't, you're going to fail. And I think that the game, the business, the sport has become so much bigger in terms of how you manage it. But if you start with those premises, you give yourself a greater chance of achieving what you want to achieve, and that's ultimately fill your building, compete at the highest level for championships, and be a really good team and an interesting team, and then everybody gets this great joy from their ability to share in it. Kelly McCrimmon, I saw his speech on Monday evening to the maybe it was Sunday night to they got the rings in Vegas. But Kelly got up and he talked about how everybody, the amateur scouts who are out there working hard, when you trade picks to try to help the team win, they're sacrificing a little bit. When the pro scouts are out there saying we need to acquire this player, you need to listen. And, what does it mean when you got to give up a player that's part of your system, and everybody's sacrificing for the ultimate goal?
Yeah.
And Kelly, it's about a minute long speech that was captured. And to me, it's the essence of being part of a team. Not everybody's going to get exactly what they would like or what they would desire, but when you give up a little bit of what you're doing and still try to be the best at what you're doing, now you have a chance to achieve something that nobody can achieve alone.
Well, I want to transition as best as I can to that, to your work at TSN. And you're an amazing, hockey analyst. What do you think some of the keys are, and on terms of sacrificing, who do you have to kind of sacrifice being around at TSN, where you have to kind of let their, I'm kidding, of course, but just what's it like, working at TSN, and what do you think some of the keys are to be a good hockey analyst and head of pro scouting?
Well, what I would say to you, Alex, is there's fantastic people that work at TSN. People that you see on camera that you work alongside, and that you get the opportunity to talk hockey with, and not just talk to hockey on camera, but also to talk to about hockey, off camera, and be able to tap into the different experiences. And to me, James Duthie's a superstar. But when like the Winnipeg Jets announced that they had signed Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele to long-term contracts on Monday. Well, Kevin Sawyer, who does the color commentary for the Winnipeg Jets, when that came down an hour or so before we were going on the air, I phoned Kevin. I wanted to hear his perspective from Kevin. He covers them. He knows it very intimately and closely, and he's so sharp and so good. And so to be able to tap into him, but you can talk to Dave Poulin. Dave Poulin was a captain in the league on good teams. And so you get his perspective, and you get Jeff O'Neill, and you get Darren Drager. Bob McKenzie still does his scouting rankings and everything. And he still offers so many different things. But you can go so many different places. You can go to Jamie McLennan. And I Tessa Bonhomme is sharp, and Kenzie Lalonde is sharp, and you look at like Lindsay Hamilton and Kara Wagland, they're superstars, and names you don't know like Jamie Griffith and Paul Medeiros, who work behind cameras, and they're not the only ones. Carrie Bulow, they're unbelievable people in terms of being able to put together things. And so Mike Lane and Jason Palter, who are managers, and everything, Kyle Lawson. I mean, they're so unbelievable. Not only are they talented at what they do, they're absolutely like determined, hardworking, excellent people. And so when you're part of that, or when they ask you to do something, you don't even think, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can all do that. It really is a place where people are all working together. And certainly when we get into the broadcast area, and we do the World Juniors, which is a big production, and Paul Graham, who does our live broadcast for all live broadcasts at TSN, and then you got Arden and Aislinn, two sisters that are production managers, and all the camera people, the producers. I mean, honestly, Alex, I could go on and on and on about over 100 people that are passionate, talented, and want everything they do, whether it be a 30-second clip, whether it be a live broadcast, they want it to be the absolute very best. And what's so fascinating about it, and I think we all kind of are cut from the same mold, we could have a 2.5-hour live broadcast, and there might have been something that you didn't think went well for 10 seconds,
Yeah.
And we tend to get focused on the 10 seconds
Mm.
instead of the rest of it. But that also speaks to people that have set the bar of excellence very, very high, and it's invigorating. I have so many opportunities to do so many different things. Versatility works so well for me, and I know that about myself, and I'm given that opportunity to do a lot of different things. The weekend, I flew into Toronto on Friday. I went down to Plymouth, Michigan. I watched the National Team Development Program play for the draft. I went to Michigan State on Saturday and Sunday to watch a game. They have an outstanding young defenseman, Artyom Leshunov, who's playing there. Now I'm back in Toronto. I'll watch some junior games, while I'm here, while I'm doing some studio work. So the opportunity for me to do so many different things, like, it really, really keeps me alive and humming along. So and I'm afforded that opportunity at TSN, and I guess what I would say to you is that I serve a lot of masters, and but they're
Is that Mark
wonderful
Masters
people
or
who really get. Well, Mark Masters. I mean,
no?
Mark
I'm
Masters
kidding.
is his own person. Like, I mean, Mark Masters is so awesome to
Yeah.
work with.
I'm
But
just joking.
I mean, again, like, I mean, we did the season preview, and if you go across the country and you see all the
Yeah, I saw that.
reporters that are like, well, they're all invested in their teams, and they provide so much information. And so, I mean, again, like, whether whoever it may be, you mentioned Mark, but it's just
Yeah.
awesome to be part of it. It really is.
Can I just first, before I'm gonna get to the Canadian teams and we'll do a quick round. I don't want to keep you too long, but
It's
how
okay, Alex. We're just humming along here. Don't worry.
how do you like, just as an outsider, how do you do all the scouting and then you go on and say, do analysis for, the NHL game while watching the national, like, how do you find time to dig into all of it all at once, with so many hands and so many different places?
Well, number one, like, so let me go to the scouting, Alex. The biggest thing with the scouting is that I'm watching it over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm for an example. So I'm coming into I do a lot of international tournaments. I watch probably about 100 to 110 games a year. Now, you go to international tournaments, you're watching it over time. Now, keep in mind, I'm trying to keep tabs on about 60 to 75 players. Now, through that, and the so-called top players in a draft. Now, through that, you get extended to watch other players and everything. So I'm not trying to focus in on the big picture.
Mm.
I'm narrowed in on the. And so the international tournaments give me where all the best players are, right, where they show up. But then you go and you follow up, like, Lev Shunov, he plays for Belarus. He's not going to be at any international tournaments.
Yeah.
He's at Michigan State. But I watched him play last year at Green Bay in the USHL. Now you see an opportunity. Okay, there's no NHL games on Saturday or Sunday, or not ones that. So it's a perfect time for me to go. You got to manage your schedule. You got to manage your time, and you do that. Friday, I'm not working, so I'm going to go watch Saginaw play at Oshawa.
Mm.
Like you afternoon games when I'm working at night. Like you get those opportunities. Saturday night I'm working, but I get to go see Saginaw, Mississauga in the afternoon. So you're just working where you can in these different areas. But I'm not trying to. I'm trying to watch over periods of time. So, for an example, and just for an example to just give you an idea, and I'm just gonna pick out this. I'm just gonna pick out this player, Berkeley Catton. So he was the captain of Canada's Hellebuyck Gretzky gold medal winning team. Now, I saw him play last year at the World Under 17 Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw him play, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. Then I saw him play a couple times in Spokane. Then I saw him play at the U18 tournament in April. Then I saw him at the Hellebuyck Gretzky. I've seen Berkeley Catton already play 14, 15 times. So, but that's over a span now of, by the time he comes up for his draft, it'll almost be 20 months. Yeah. I've watched him over a span, over those periods of time. But, you're afforded, when you go to a tournament, you get a guy 4 times, but then you can't just rely on those tournaments either. You got to go watch players in their leagues. And does it mean you got to go in there and watch them for a week? No, but you can go in there and get a couple of viewings and go in there. So scheduling and managing, and keep in mind, I don't have to, like, you know the league, you watch. I do Winnipeg Jets. You're watching games, and you zero in on certain games on any given night. But you got to watch. I live in Calgary, and one of the beautiful things for me, and I say this about the Mountain Time Zone, games start at 5 o'clock in
Yep.
the afternoon Mountain Time, and you can be in bed by 10:45. And so, and you can watch it east to west, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to dial into games. And with the video quality now too, like if I want to, like let's say, for an example, Sidney Crosby hasn't scored in 3 games. Well, I can go and get the video and grab video and see what Sidney Crosby has done through his shifts and everything, and kind of go, yeah, he's really struggling. He's not getting to the spots. Or conversely, don't worry, it's just a 3-game stretch where he hasn't got any points. He's good. But you didn't have that opportunity. There's so much video available to you now, and there's ways to narrow it down. You don't have to watch a whole game. You can zip through the different parts if you're zeroing in on a player. Same with the team. Like if you want to know why a team's penalty kill is no good, you just pull out their penalty killing clips and go, here's why for 4 games they're no good. So it's part of the work, it's part of the preparation, it's part of the research. But again, like I wouldn't say it's any different than being in school. You're tasked with homework and knowing and knowing a topic, whatever the topic matter is. You got to know it. And for me, I get tested every night I'm on TV, and the fans know. Like I talk about hockey in Canada. If I go on and I don't know, they know I don't know. Yep. There's no fooling anybody. So do I want to go on there and let everybody know I don't know? I don't. And be honest with you, Alec, there's times when I have to say no. Now, that it might be something obscure. It's not something obvious. But there's some things I go, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to have to go do a little bit more work on that.
I want to ask you about the Ottawa Senators. As you know, I'm here in Ottawa, go to a bunch of games covering the team. I was listening to or watching your season preview. You had them making the conference finals, which as high as I thought I was on the team, you completely shredded that. That was way higher than I thought. So just explain to us why you think this team can take a giant leap and not only make the playoffs, but potentially make the conference finals, albeit it is a season preview. So I'm not going to give you too much grief if they miss the playoffs.
Okay, so that's fair enough. And, there's an argument to be made that they haven't done it yet. Doesn't mean they won't, but they got to show it. I get that. So, again, they had 86 points last year. So, and we know that they didn't start out well. And, we can look down the stretch and go, okay, it wasn't really important. But, they had some challenges and, certainly injuries to goaltenders. Anton Forsberg got hurt. And, but when I look at it and I sit down and I say, okay, yeah, you don't know. The New Jersey Devils last year. Now I'm going to just give you if I would have said last year in the season preview, the New York Rangers should really watch out for the New Jersey Devils. That New Jersey Devils team could take her. People would have scoffed. The New Jersey Devils had 69 points in the season prior to last year. 69. They went to 112. They had more points than the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had more points than the Toronto Maple Leafs. We saw them in the playoffs early, get behind 2-0 versus the Rangers, and then they won. They won, right? So if I would have said that last year, people would have probably said the same thing. Yeah, they're young and they're young. And young. I get it. And I'm thinking. But when I watch the Ottawa Senators and I see the work that I'll be straightforward. I wasn't buying them last summer. There was a lot of talk. Oh, they got Giroux, they got the. I wasn't buying them last summer because their defense was strong enough. Their goaltending, in my view, wasn't strong enough. And they still had some, like Tim Stützle was still in that period of moving forward. And Tim Stützle, to me, this year is like Jack Hughes was last year. He's going to clearly establish himself in that superstar category. Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, Drake Batherson. Ridley Gregg's young, but he's going to be a good player. They're going to get Pinto signed. They need to get him signed. Josh Norris healthy. They signed Tarasenko. They trade for Kubalik. Like, to me, they have so many. They trade for Jacob Churkin last year. They signed Korpisalo. Remember what I said earlier about see the team as it is? To me, they now have all the things you need, in my view, that you need to have in order to be a contender. And now the first part of contending is for playoffs. I get that. But when I go back and I think about where the New Jersey Devils were at last year, and then I watched, and I remember they kind of hit a little bump around. Oh, they were doing really well through November. And people said, I'm buying them. Then they went through a little bump early in the new year. I said, no, they're too good. And again, underlying numbers. Their defense didn't fall off. There's going to be nights you play well and you don't win. To me, Ottawa has all the elements that you need. You have Chychrun takes pressure off of Shabbat. Sanderson's emerged as a really good player. Zub is a really good player. And now you can allow these players to be in the right spots. And I think they're ready. I think they're ready to take those steps and be. I'll be straightforward with you, Alex. I think if the Ottawa Senators play the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs, I'm putting my chips on the Ottawa Senators, not the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because I think what Ottawa has is what Toronto needs. And by that, moxie. Like the ability to say, you know what? We're taking it to you. I don't see that from the Toronto Maple Leafs. I saw it last year from the Florida Panthers. I saw it from the Vegas Golden Knights. Until Toronto shows me that they can take it to an opponent, I'm not. Ottawa does that.
How much does that come from like the best players? Because I look at Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk and I see no fear. And when I look at maybe a Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, at least in the playoffs, it doesn't feel as scary, and they don't score a lot of goals in the playoffs at the big moments. Like, how much of that is just your best players, maybe are, I don't want to say more determined, but just have that maybe fearlessness a bit more than maybe the Leafs?
I wouldn't suggest that Mitch or Austin are like have fear or anything, but that's why I use the term taking it to the opponent. The playoffs are a different animal. First of all, 16 teams are eliminated that are no good, right? Yeah. So there's no bad teams now in the playoffs. I could talk about Florida and they got in. Doesn't matter, they got in. So now you're playing good teams. So understanding who you're playing and how you're going to take it to them. That to me is the key to success come playoff time. And if you can't take it to your opponent when it matters in the playoff, you're going to have a tough time having success. And I'm not saying that Toronto can't do that. They just haven't shown me that. Ottawa has shown me that. The New Jersey Devils showed me that. Other teams have shown me that. And it doesn't mean Toronto won't show me that, but they haven't. And we're into year whatever.
7, I think.
7, right? And sorry, I keep hearing the same things year after year after year. I need to see it. I need to see it. Yeah, your actions speak so loudly that I'm not hearing what you're saying.
And you talked about just their defense, and I completely agree on TSN. Just like that doesn't look like a defense on the Leafs that is good enough to win a cup. Is that just something where they need to add at the deadline? Is it simple they add like a Matthias Ekholm kind of type like what the Oilers did, or is it a bigger maybe issue on the back end for the Leafs?
See your team as it is. Not as you hope it is, not as you hope it could be. See your team as it is. And to me, they're not long enough, hard enough. Like sides is you come and look at the play, and I hear this constantly. Well, yeah, Vegas, okay, Vegas, Colorado, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, Washington. Don't tell me that there's not a formula here. There's a formula here, and it's very clear what the formula is. And the Toronto Maple Leafs have not exacted the formula. Hey, listen, Brad Treliving was brought in for one reason and one reason only: change the playoff outcomes. That's his mandate. That's his objective. I don't have any question in my mind that Brad's going to work towards that end. But to me, until I see a better, bigger, harder blue line, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get a number one defenseman. You just got to change the complexity of that blue line, the composition, not the complexity, the composition of the blue line. And that's, to me, what will give them success. And again, that doesn't mean they couldn't win, chips fall in the right way. But when you got to rely on the chips falling in like the right way in your direction, that means your team isn't optimized. Now, is there a perfect team? No, there's no perfect team. But you're trying to optimize it to the greatest extent.
With that, I want to go from the Leafs a little bit to you alluded to the Jets earlier on, and you've talked about it a little bit on TSN, but just how close are the Jets now that they've locked up Scheifele and Hellebuyck to these long-term deals? How close are they to becoming a contender in your mind?
Yeah, it's always a really good kind of how you measure how close they are to being a contender. They aren't a contender right now, but do they have some players? Number one, they have a goaltender that's top 5 in the league, in my view. I like the like what they did. Alex Iafallo, Rasmus Kupari, Gabe Vilardi individually are not better than Pierre-Luc Dubois, but the trio makes the Jets better than having Pierre-Luc Dubois alone. So now again, we're back to building a team, right? They're big, they're strong, those 3 players. Scheifele, Lowry is your third line center. That affords them the opportunity to have Perfetti find his way in the middle of the ice. They have lots of skill. The blue line, it's good under Rick Bowness. I thought that their defensive play improved significantly. So to me, they're moving in the right direction. And, they had to make some tough decisions. Kevin Cheveldayoff knows how good Pierre-Luc Dubois is. Blake Wheeler, played there for a lot of years. Buying him out, was something that they felt was necessary. Well, now it's taking those next steps. What Rick Bowness said at the end of their playoff series versus Vegas, and basically what he said is, when we get pushed up against it, we don't know how to respond. And he's not saying the players won't. He's saying we don't know how to respond. We don't know how to push back. We don't know how to and player push back, but sometimes they're just not sure. So I think that trying to work with your team and trying to instill that over the course of the season, some changes that were made. I think that the Jets are a good team. Last year, through 45 games, more than halfway through, they were one of the best teams in the Western Conference. They ran into a 21-game skid that wasn't very good, and then they found their game and played really well. I mean, they waxed Vegas in the first game of that series. You're kind of going, uh-oh. But, Vegas pushed, and, so we'll see. But I think they're taking steps in the right direction. But they're not a team that you can say they're a contender. But that's why, as a manager, this is what you got to do to continue to try to push your team forward, keep pushing your team ahead. What does a team need at any moment in time? Maybe we need a little bit more of this. Maybe we need somebody like that. And, I remember when the Washington Capitals traded for Michael Kempny, and Michael Kempny became a real good, important player on a Stanley Cup winning team. Trevor Daley got acquired by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ironically, they both came from Chicago after Chicago had acquired them and somehow didn't like them. So Trevor goes and wins 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, and Michael Kemp, but they were both really instrumental. Yeah, everybody would like a number 1 defenseman, but sometimes what you need is like you pointed out, Matthias Ekholm. You point out, I just pointed out Kempny and Trevor Daley. Sometimes those are the players. Josh Manson went to Colorado. He was instrumental to their team winning the Cup. So you think about different types of players that come in and just add strength in different areas. That's a manager's job, and it's not easy, Alex.
No,
but that's where they have to, really evaluate how they're trying. Like, Patrick Kane, Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. When the New York Rangers acquired him last year, you're like, what? You just acquired Tarasenko. What are you doing? And yet the year before, they go and get Andrew Kopp, and you're going, yeah, that's the type of player they need. So, it's not that managers aren't trying. It's not that managers are infallible. They're always trying to improve their team. But like from the outside looking in, you're going, geez, what am I going to say? Patrick's not a top-notch player. You don't want him, but maybe not here. Yeah, maybe not here, right?
I want to go to the Oilers, because I thought what you said was really interesting, is that their biggest challenge this year might be their own division. Just heading into the season with this Oilers team, how would you compare them to their previous iterations that haven't been able to get over the line really in the past 2 years? And is this Oilers team better than maybe the others going into the year?
Well, keep in mind they're going to start the year with Matthias Ekholm. So, you look at the record when they acquired Matthias Ekholm their record was really good. Jack Campbell had his ups and downs last year. Stuart Skinner established himself as the number 1 goaltender and played really well. Playoffs are a different animal. And I believe Stuart will learn from that. But I also believe the Edmonton Oilers have an opportunity to learn from that too. They lost in the conference final 2 years ago to Colorado. Then they lost last year to Vegas. Both teams went on to win the Stanley Cup. I think that those become really good opportunities for teams to learn, for individuals to learn. And you're starting the year with Ekholm. So it's not about starting last year. It's about where they were and what they did with Ekholm as part of their team. McDavid and Draisaitl are the two best players on the planet. They're unbelievable. They're great. I don't think there's any question that they're a contender. I think their division is really, really tough. I'd like to just see, and Ken Holland did this. I'd like to see a little bit more in their third line, down maybe in their fourth line, a little bit more of what allowed them to win a lot in Detroit. A little bit more of players like Draper and McCarty and Lapointe and Maltby. That I want to see a little bit more of that in the lineup. Players that, and those players, and I know it because I was in Dallas and we were playing against those Detroit teams. When you're sitting on the bench as an opponent and you're a defenseman or a forward, you're sitting, they got Yzerman and Shanahan and Fedorov and Larionov and all these guys. And then you're going, oh, God, I got to go against Lapointe. I got to go against Draper and Maltby and McCarty. There's no chance for you to sit there and have any moment of relaxation, mentally or physically, because they are coming after you at every point in time. So ideally, do I think they're a contender? Yeah. Would I like to try to move, if I'm there, I would like to try to move it forward a little bit with those types of players. Those are the types of players that I like, I want Nicolas Roy on my team. I want William Carrier on my team. And the Vegas Golden Knights, they felt that they beat Edmonton with their third and fourth lines last year. They know how good McDavid and Draisaitl were. They said they felt they beat them with their third and fourth lines. Detroit won. Detroit didn't win until they got those guys. So Draper, Maltby, McCarty, Lapointe. They didn't win. They had lots of skill. And that's where I think Edmonton, to give themselves a better chance, and how I'd like to try to optimize their line, that's how I would look at it.
How much of it is just they need more depth? Like, you've kind of alluded to the type of player, but, if you look at Vegas, and I know you've picked them to win the Cup this year again, but they won with those third and fourth lines. Like, is that even with the McDavid and Draisaitl, do they really need to focus on depth as much as just is that the way to win in the NHL? As good as McDavid and Draisaitl is, you still need depth over maybe superstars in some cases, but you'd obviously want both. But
you need superstars. Trust me, you're not winning without superstars. And I'm taking my chances with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But listen, they ended up getting Pietrangelo. They ended up getting Mark Stone. They ended up getting Jack Eichel. Okay, so these guys are frontline elite players. So make no mistake about it. But the playoffs are a grind. It's 16 wins, 24, 25 games to win. You need that depth. You need that, but you also need the right kind of depth. It's not just about having players. And so type of player in your depth is critically important. There's no way everybody has depth, but is it quality? And I want a certain type of player to drive. Listen, we won in Dallas, and we had teams that, we had Mike Keane, and we had Brian Skrudland, and we had players that were edgy. Jamie Lagenbrunner was a top two-line player, but he had Dave Reed was big and strong and weighty, and we had quality depth in our lineup. So I think, again, does it mean they can't win? No, they're a contender. I'm just saying, nobody ever said Detroit wasn't a contender all those years, but they pushed themselves further ahead. And what I call optimization, or the best optimization given your circumstances, by having those four players. And Joey Kocher, he was a big part of 97, so I don't want to dismiss Joey here, because he was a big part of that team in 97 that swept the Philadelphia Flyers. Go and look. Randy McKay. Go look at the players. John Madden in New Jersey. They won they won lots of cups. Depth, baby, depth, quality, depth, edgy, hard players. Jonathan Toews told me this a number of years ago. He said, no sport has such a complete difference between the regular season and the playoffs like the NHL. And he says, and you hear about it until you get there and you see it. You don't realize it. And he goes, that's a reality. And so the regular season is great. You need to be good in the regular season, but you better be prepared for the rigors and the challenges and the demands of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Because if you're not, you can have great regular season. You're not going to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs because it's hard and it's different.
From one team that isn't very close to the playoffs, but has been making steps, and this is the last team before I have one fun question for you at the end, Craig, but just how would you grade the Montreal Canadiens rebuild so far? And can Suzuki and Caufield be like the stars to take this team to the next level and maybe become a contender in a couple of years?
Oh, I think you nailed it. It's a couple of years. That's what they're trying to do. They've embraced it. They've been very open about what they're doing and how they're going to try to go about it. They're going to make sure that they're going to give their young players opportunities when it warrants opportunity. But we're looking at 2-3 years before this team is going to be able to because the players have to move. I have no questions on Suzuki and Caufield, but it's going to be dependent on other players progressing. It's going to be dependent on defensemen continuing to progress. They have a plethora of good young prospects. They're 2-3 years away. I'm not saying from playing in the NHL. There's a difference. You come into the NHL, and in vast majority of cases as a young player, trying to show that you can play in the NHL.
Yeah.
Then you then you assisted in the NHL. Then you become productive in the NHL.
Mm.
And that's, unless your name's Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin, and that's where Jack Hughes, there's a perfect example. He was the first overall pick. Perfect example. Tim Stützle, perfect examples. That's where Montreal finds themselves. Yeah, but I think the fact is that they've been honest with themselves. They've been honest with everybody. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to go about it.
Well, this is a fun question before I let you go, Craig. Just if you were the NHL commissioner for one day, what rule would you change?
What rule? I get one rule to change.
Yeah,
one rule to change.
Yes.
What would be the rule that I would change? I mean, I have a lot in my head. I really do. I have a lot in my head. I have a lot that I shouldn't say a lot, but that I advocate for. I would have players serve the full 2 minutes of their penalties.
I've heard that.
And with that, you're not allowed to ice the puck. And all head contact is met with an immediate game misconduct. And then it's up to the Department of Player Safety to determine if it deserves supplemental discipline.
Well, Craig, thanks.
3 things I gave you.
No, it was mostly on penalties. So I love the answer. I agree with them all, actually. So you get a vote for me as a fan for you, Commissioner Button. So thanks again for doing this. Is there anything at TSN that you want to plug just quickly that people can maybe keep their eyes and ears open for?
Oh, no, I mean, it's the beginning of the regular season. I mean, we got people covering it all the way from coast to coast. And, I talked about the reporters who are so embedded and so invested in what they do, but the people calling the games, watching the games, and, it's fun. It's a new season, and with a new season comes new hope. And with new hope comes an opportunity to dream of what could be. And certainly there's some teams that are closer to having their big dreams answered, other teams that are along the path. So it's just fun. And you know what, it's great to be part of it at TSN, and TSN will continue to deliver.
Well, for your sake, Craig, I hope Canada wins the World Juniors, and it's an all Canadian matchup in the Stanley Cup final. So TSN has all this coverage, and as I can say as a fan, love your work, and I'm excited for the season and to see and hear all that you produce, and I hope you have a great year.
So next time we connect, I won't give it away now, but we'll talk about the World Junior before the World Junior. And
there you go.
I'll tell you, I'll give you some thoughts there, but this isn't the time. It's about the beginning of the NHL
Perfect.
Regular season.
I'll definitely take you up on that, Craig. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Alex.